the biggest people behind taking down Harvey Weinstein, a victim of Harvey Weinstein, and she is making huge and important allegations about somebody in a heated recall, and no network other than conservative media is covering it, despite the Me Too fervor that consumed the legacy media for a year after the Weinstein case broke. Nobody wants to touch Rose McGowan now because she's actually questioning the entire system and not just one person. She's questioning the entire political establishment in the country, and now they don't want to talk about it. Ryan, what do you think about that?
Yeah, Rose is to the elite the kind of person that has gone rogue.
Yeah, she goes on Tucker.
Right. And if you're a member of the elites, you're allowed to go rogue in order to take down somebody who then goes down.
Yep.
Like if you win that fight, then you are welcomed back into the elite. That person, Harvey Weinstein, is thrown out, and everything continues as it was. And the elite circle kind of recoalesces, comes back, recongeals, comes back together.
It's like a worm; it grows back.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you're entitled that rogue behavior if you win. If you lose, you're out. You can never come back in. But it's expected that that's it. You took this person on. Hey, we shunned them. We got rid of them. What are you still complaining about? Like, so if you are still speaking up, then you are considered to be a full-on rogue actor and are no longer a welcome member of the elite club anymore. And I think that's where Rose now finds herself. Kim, you're from L.A. You're in L.A.
I am.
Do I have that right? Are those the rules of kind of elite behavior?
Yeah, I mean, clearly you're not allowed to take out somebody who is, what we're seeing is you're not allowed to take out somebody who is potentially going to be replaced by a Republican. So it seems to be okay, like in the case of Cuomo, for example, where he's going to be replaced with another Democrat. He's not as at risk for that state to flip. But in this situation, I mean, what really stands out to me in this story is how connected everybody in positions of power actually are. It's disgusting. I mean, it's like we're run by a cabal in this country. Why are all of these people? Why is Gavin Newsom's wife getting involved and calling Rose McGowan? I mean, at first that story sounded almost unbelievable, right? It's like, what in the world? Why would she call Rose McGowan and say, oh, I mean, Rose McGowan didn't even really know her name, right? So it's like, it wasn't like they were friends and suddenly she said, well, let's go do lunch. And by the way, what are you doing with, why are you taking Harvey down? I mean, this is, why did Jennifer, and then we see kind of the receipts, right, that Rose McGowan is able to provide. So then okay, well, then I guess the story's true. But it just shows that they're all connected. And this is why so many of us are disgusted. This is why I'm voting to recall Gavin Newsom. I'm disgusted with the elites. I'm disgusted with the establishment. He goes and dines at French Laundry with lobbyists, and his wife is, trying to run interference for Harvey Weinstein. This is disgusting, and this is the problem.
Because she makes money from it, and because she has these connections to boys. And I think one of to Kim's point, they're all connected, but there are also just like incredible consequences to that level of interconnectedness. And it's a good example of how Democrats take for granted. We talked earlier in the show about how they take for granted minority voters. They take for granted women voters too, because Gavin Newsom and the Democratic establishment, they will talk a big game about Me Too and feminism and women's empowerment. But in the sort of shadow of the media where, Washington Post likes to say democracy dies in darkness and then just sort of turns down the light on Democrats and focuses most of its energy on Republicans, Gavin Newsom gets away with this BS. And were it not for Rose McGowan, who sort of feels unshackled right now because these people have sort of turned their backs on her anyway, were it not for Rose McGowan, voters would not know that Jennifer Siebel Newsom and the Newsom family was conducting itself that way.
When it comes to UBI, Universal Basic Income, I followed Andrew Yang. Followed him in the presidential primary. He was a happy warrior, unlike a lot of the other candidates who had like dog faces of doom and gloom. It's like, gee, if they smiled, there would probably be an earthquake. And I listened to what he had to say, and I said, well, this is a novel idea. And I immediately thought back to the person who was considered like the guru of modern day capitalism, Milton Friedman, Chicago University, the author of Supply Side Economics. I mean, a libertarian, clearly conservative in his values. And he was like toying with that idea, saying, if this were to be implemented and it could work, it might eliminate the huge, cumbersome social service bureaucracy which sucks off a lot of the money before it even gets to the clients. So I looked at that. And I listened to Andrew Yang, who sort of elevated the entire discussion. And he said, we got to do it not only as a humanitarian gesture, but with no limits, no means test, because this is the future. And then I saw recently Elon Musk, who was saying, you know, the era of artificial intelligence and robotics is here. And although I never participated at that level of business, my credibility was as a night manager of McDonald's. That's why I formed the Guardian Angels 42 years ago. I have seen prototypes of McDonald's restaurants in which there will only be one human being in the restaurant. Everything else will be artificial intelligence, robotics, only one human being. So all of those menial level jobs, those minimal wage jobs could conceivably be wiped out. So I am open to experimenting, testing. So my idea is, I haven't been completely sold by universal basic income, but I'm saying as mayor, I would dedicate $14 million in a 2-year study. We take 500 participants, no mean test, give them $1,100 a month. They spend it as they see fit. We do analytics because we want to track it to see how effective it is. And then let's see, when all is said and done, where it leads us. Does it lead us in the direction of a Milton Friedman, libertarians and conservatives, or does it lead us in the direction of Andrew Yang and the Yang Gang? And I certainly want to applaud Andrew Yang for ousting himself from the Democratic establishment, who so mistreated him in this Democratic primary in New York City. For instance, Eric Adams called him a fraud, a liar, a snake oil salesman, and then called him a racist. I said, well, wait a second, he's an Asian American. How's he a racist? But hey, you know, they treated him like a person of no consequence, so I applaud him leaving, setting up a third party. I believe in additional parties. More parties is better for democracy.
If you look at what the reporting says he actually said to, to the other military commanders, he was saying that just want to remind everybody, he looked him in the eye, just want to remind everybody that there is a process in place for when we launch a nuclear weapon, and that process includes me. If he's really doing it just as a reminder, this is our process, let's not skip our process just in case there's an order of a nuclear strike, then I think it fits with what Robbie's describing, which is him saying, look, let's just be extra careful we don't blow up the world between now and January 20th. And then once he's out of that, then kind of puffing up what his role was in that, in preventing this madman from destroying the planet. So I think it matters if because it doesn't appear yet that there is evidence that he stripped the power from the president and gave it to himself. That's how it's kind of being presented, but that's not actually what's in the reporting. But it's in everybody's interest to take it to the extreme. It's in the left's interest, the resistance liberals' interest, because then they can celebrate the guy and you can elevate how much of a madman he is. It's in the right's interest because then they can say, well, we told you the deep state was undermining Trump. I think actually this whole question is kind of averting a real issue here, and I'm curious where you guys come down on this. The Constitution doesn't actually, there were no nuclear weapons in 1789.
Right.
But the Constitution does not give the president the unilateral authority to strike a foreign country. It's just not in there. It's just something that they've kind of arrogated to themselves over the years. So isn't this a good opportunity for Congress to step back in and say, you know what? You don't have first strike authority. You want to strike a foreign country, you have to come to Congress and get a declaration of war like it says in the Constitution. How about we go back to that? And whether it's Biden, Trump, whoever. Right. And then you don't have to rely on the military trying to get in the way.
Yeah, they probably should do that, but I don't know if now is really, I mean, and maybe they will. Maybe they'll cart it into Congress and say, well, we've got to stop a madman because Trump might end up in office again. Certainly there's a place for discussion on that. But this is just, I think that, look, if Mark Milley was saying all of these things in order to sell books and make rounds on CNN and MSNBC and become the new resistance hero, then fine if it was a memoir and he was no longer serving the country. But he's currently serving the country. He needs to go. You cannot come out and say, well, look what I did. I subverted the president of the United States. And then what's even more disgusting to me is to turn on CNN and MSNBC MSNBC, and see them actually champion this like this is a good thing. They're saying, good, there was a military coup essentially going on, and this is exactly what we needed to get rid of that madman. Secondly, it also calls really into question some of the claims that Trump supporters are making. Right? They're making, hey, listen, they were willing to do anything to make sure Trump was not going to be in office. They were willing to go so far that in October, before Election Day, they were essentially sowing the seeds, right, of saying, listen, Trump is a madman, and we've got to do absolutely everything in our power to stop him. And that everything leaves a lot of people with a lot of questions. How far were they really, truly willing to go to stop Donald Trump? So if you want to stop the claims of election fraud, if you want to stop the claims of Trump really won the election and these powers, these undercurrents were undercutting him, this isn't helping at all.